They say let it go. They say be the bigger person. But every time you tolerate disrespect, you're making a silent declaration. I accept this treatment. I deserve this position. Disrespect isn't just rudeness, it's a test. It's a signal fire sent out to see if you're prey or predator. The moment you let it slide, you teach people exactly how to treat you. And worse, you broadcast to the world that you have no boundaries, no spine. Machiavelli didn't believe in the illusion of morality. He believed in perception of power. In The Prince, he warned that rulers who tried to be loved and respected without first commanding fear were doomed to be devoured. The same applies to your life. When you accept subtle slights, when you laugh off condescension, when you pretend you're unbothered, you're not taking the high road, you're taking the bait. You've just told your opponent that they can dig deeper next time. You think you're keeping the peace, but you're feeding wolves with your silence. And wolves don't stop once they taste blood. They circle back for the kill. In every social hierarchy, school, work, family, business, respect is the invisible currency. And like currency, its value is determined by what you tolerate. If you let it be devalued once, inflation sets in. Soon, your words mean nothing. Your presence means nothing. You become ignorable. This video isn't about ego. It's about war, psychological war, social war. And if you're still treating disrespect like a minor offense, understand this. You're losing battles you don't even see. Before we go any further, understand this. The people who master this game, the game of perception, dominance, and respect, are not just lucky. They're not just intelligent. They are strategic. They know the terrain, they know the rules beneath the rules, and they never tolerate what weakens them. If you're tired of being underestimated, ignored, or quietly disrespected, if you're ready to flip the script and become untouchable, then this channel is your new headquarters. Here we don't deal in motivation fluff. We deal in psychological warfare, Machiavellian tactics, and raw power principles. So, before I break down the mechanics of disrespect, how it infects your identity and dismantles your authority, make a move that marks your shift. Subscribe now if you're done being passive. Hit the bell if you're ready to walk into every room like a force to be reckoned with. Now let's go deeper into how this silent virus called tolerance rewires your mind. Disrespect is never random. It's not an accident. It's not a slip of the tongue. Disrespect is a test, a precise psychological probe designed to uncover exactly where you stand in the social food chain. The person who mocks you in front of others, they're not joking, they're watching. The friend who cuts you off mid-sentence, they're not distracted, they're measuring. The boss who forgets your contribution, they're not forgetful, they're recalibrating the hierarchy. In every case, disrespect is a social positioning test, a Machiavellian maneuver to shift the balance of power. And it always has one purpose, to see if you'll flinch. People test your boundaries not because they hate you, but because they want to know your limits. Because in the wild, and make no mistake, we are still in the wild, every social interaction is a negotiation of dominance. Niccolo Machiavelli would say, "He who allows himself to be insulted has already accepted inferiority." He saw disrespect not as a momentary slight, but a political signal, a sign that your throne is unguarded. And if you let it slide, they don't just see weakness, they record it. Mentally, emotionally, strategically. One moment of unchecked disrespect becomes a reference point for future behavior. Think about it. Your boss makes a subtle joke at your expense in a meeting. A friend throws a jab disguised as sarcasm and watches for your reaction. Someone interrupts you repeatedly and you force a smile to keep the peace. What's happening isn't conflict, it's calibration. They're calculating your tolerance, seeing how far they can go, finding the line so they can cross it again with greater force. But here's the truth most never learn. Disrespect, when seen correctly, is data. It's not just an offense, it's intelligence, a clue, a readout of who sees you as a threat and who sees you as expendable. Because when people throw disrespect your way, they're broadcasting two things. One, they believe you won't fight back. Two, they believe the risk of challenging you is low. And once that belief is planted, it spreads. Emotionally, tolerating disrespect builds quiet resentment. You tell yourself it's not worth the fight, but internally, a fracture begins. One slight, one jab, one dismissal at a time, and your self-concept starts to decay. You become bitter, reactive, drained. Not because you're weak, but because you're betraying your own standards. Machiavelli would say, it is better to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both. But here's the modern truth. You don't need fear, you need consequence. And when there's no consequence to disrespect, you train the world to treat you like an afterthought. This is why the psychology of disrespect must be studied, not emotionally, but strategically. Because every jab, every joke, every silence in the face of your value is an attack on your positioning. And if you don't respond to the test, you fail it by default. Which leads us to the deeper problem. The real danger is not just that you're disrespected. The real danger is this: what you allow, you endorse. Here's the law of power no one wants to admit. Silence is social permission. When someone disrespects you and you say nothing, they don't interpret that as patience. They interpret it as consent. Disrespect tolerated once becomes a green light forever. That's how the game works. People don't respond to your intentions. They respond to your standards. And when your standards are invisible, or worse, flexible, you become a soft target in every room you enter. Let's make it real. Your coworker constantly cuts you off during meetings. You let it go once. Now it's a habit. A so-called friend makes jokes at your expense. You laugh to keep it light. Now you're the punchline. A partner raises their voice in an argument. You excuse it as stress. Now it's part of the script. You didn't say yes, but you didn't say no. And in power dynamics, no resistance equals approval. This is why nice people get eaten alive. Because in their quest to be liked, to avoid confrontation, to keep the peace, they reinforce the very behavior that destroys their self-respect. Machiavelli would say, men must either be caressed or annihilated. They will avenge slight injuries, but not massive ones. In other words, half measures get you hurt. Subtle tolerance invites open warfare. And worst of all, when people discover you'll accept disrespect, they teach others how to treat you the same way. This is social learning. In a group setting, people study how others treat you and model it. If one person gets away with undermining you, others will test the same boundary, often unconsciously. Here's a public example. A well-known celebrity once ignored repeated jabs from talk show hosts, comedians, and even interviewers. At first, it was mild, sarcasm, insinuations, passive-aggressive digs. But over time, the disrespect escalated. Why? Because there was no pushback, no correction. The world learned that this person could be mocked without consequence. Their image shifted from powerful to pitiful, and the public perception never recovered. That's the danger. Disrespect doesn't stay at level 1. It compounds, it escalates, it snowballs into full-scale erosion of your identity, influence, and internal power. You must rewire your understanding now. Tolerating disrespect is not mature. It's not zen. It's not strong. It's self-sabotage. Because when you let someone cross the line and do nothing, your subconscious watches it happen. And worse, it starts to believe that this is all you're worth. So how do you stop the pattern immediately? By breaking the reinforcement loop. When someone disrespects you, there are only 3 strategic options. 1. Redirect. Change the dynamic with tone, eye contact, or silence. Make them feel the shift. 2. Confront. Address it calmly, clearly, and with full composure. No aggression, just correction. 3. Withdraw. Remove access. If someone repeatedly crosses boundaries, they lose proximity. The key is this: your response must create discomfort, not drama, not chaos, just enough tension to reset the equation. Disrespect is a transaction. If they get the benefit, dominance, humor, attention without cost, the behavior will continue. Machiavellian insight: invisibility breeds irrelevance, and irrelevance invites attack. You don't have to fight every battle, but you do have to signal that you're not furniture, you're a presence. And your boundaries are non-negotiable. Because the moment you flinch, appease, or laugh it off, you reinforce a new identity, one that accepts being stepped on. This isn't about being loud or aggressive, it's about being deliberate and unshakable. Because ultimately, the people who command the most respect aren't the ones who bark or beg. They're the ones who move through life with a clear, unapologetic sense of self-worth. And that leads us directly into the next level of damage. When you tolerate disrespect long enough, it doesn't just change how others see you, it reprograms how you see yourself. Disrespect isn't just external. It doesn't stay on the surface. Over time, it burrows deep. It rewrites your identity. At first, you think you're being the bigger person. You brush off the slight. You swallow the insult. You tell yourself, it's not worth it. But your subconscious, it's watching. It's listening. It's recording every betrayal, not of them, but of yourself. Every time you let someone talk over you, every time you laugh off a degrading joke, every time you bite your tongue when your soul screams otherwise, you teach your mind a dangerous belief. My boundaries don't matter. My dignity is negotiable. I don't deserve to be respected. This is the identity erosion effect. It doesn't happen overnight, but like water on stone, disrespect wears you down, drop by drop. At first you just feel drained, then unsure, then small. And eventually you look in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back. Not because you've changed, but because you've been chipped away. And here's the brutal truth. The world can smell it. Your enemies can smell when you've stopped believing in yourself. Your posture shifts, your voice hesitates, your eyes lose fire, and suddenly you go from being a person to being prey. Machiavelli understood this better than most. It is much safer to be feared than loved if one has to do without one of the two. But let's go deeper. Why? Because fear, or more precisely respect through strength, stems from an unwavering self-concept. And when that self-concept crumbles, so does your ability to command space, set boundaries, and hold power. Here's what psychology shows us. Chronic disrespect leads to learned helplessness, where you start believing you can't change your situation. That helplessness turns into low self-worth, which manifests as insecurity, anxiety, even depression. Eventually, you begin to preemptively shrink, avoiding confrontation at all costs, even when your soul demands it. But here's the twist. You didn't end up here because you were weak. You ended up here because you were conditioned to believe that enduring pain was strength. Let me give you a real-world anonymous example. A highly competent executive, respected in her field, slowly began tolerating jabs from a newer male colleague. At first, it was subtle, sarcastic remarks in meetings, playful dismissals of her input. She didn't respond, didn't want to seem defensive. After a few months, her contributions started being questioned. She began speaking less, her ideas were overlooked, her reputation dimmed. Eventually, she was passed over for a promotion by the same man who tested her boundaries from the beginning. And here's what she said to a mentor in private. I betrayed myself, one silence at a time. That's what it comes down to. Not the disrespect of others, but the betrayal of the self. Because the subconscious mind is always watching. It's not listening to what you say, it's watching what you tolerate. And when it sees you fold in the face of disrespect, it updates your identity accordingly. I am not worth defending. I don't deserve better. This is normal. This is who I am now. But this isn't who you are. It's who you've been told to be, trained to be, conditioned to accept. And now it's time to end the cycle. Because once your identity begins to fracture, the predators don't wait, they close in. They're not looking for weakness, they're looking for invisible collapse, and they can spot it in seconds. Which brings us to the next layer of reality. Predators don't guess who to target. They observe, they read signals, they hunt based on data. Let's expose how they choose their victims, and how you make damn sure you're not one of them. Predators aren't random. They don't flip coins. They don't guess. They observe. And the people who get preyed on the most, they're not weak in strength. They're weak in signals, because in the social jungle, you're always broadcasting something. Micro signals, subtle cues, the way you stand, the way you speak, the way you respond to friction, it all speaks louder than your words ever could. Here's the Machiavellian truth. The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. Machiavelli understood, strength is perceived, not proven. And weakness, it leaks out before you even open your mouth. So what are these signals that predators watch for? 1. Eye contact. People who can't hold eye contact without darting away signal discomfort, fear, or social deference. To a predator, it screams, I won't fight back. 2. Body language. Tight shoulders, inward posture, fidgeting hands. These aren't just habits, they're tells. They say, I'm used to shrinking. 3. Vocal tone. Soft voice, rising pitch at the end of sentences, overly polite phrasing, all of this signals submission. Predators don't need to test someone who's already tamed. 4. Response time. If you pause too long before speaking or rush to fill silence, you're showing discomfort with power dynamics. That unease is blood in the water. But let's go deeper, because psychology explains the mechanism. Predators, whether in corporate halls or street corners, use pattern recognition. They pick up on what's known as emotional leakage, the unconscious slip of inner tension through body, tone, and behavior. And that emotional leakage only exists when your inner identity is fractured. Which is why this links perfectly to the last section. When you tolerate disrespect, you betray your identity. When your identity fractures, your signals leak. And when your signals leak, predators smell blood. It's not the actual disrespect that gets you devoured, it's what it does to your presence. Now here's a Machiavellian gem most people ignore. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. Translated, it's not your role, your job, your resume. It's the invisible power you carry into a room. The confidence that comes from someone who won't tolerate even the first sign of disrespect. Because predators don't just test for weakness, they test for reaction. Which brings us to a critical distinction. Strategic silence versus desperate pleasantries. Most people think silence is weakness, but not all silence is created equal. Strategic silence is when you pause intentionally to control the pace, build tension, reclaim power. Desperate pleasantries are when you rush to smooth the moment, to appease, to keep the peace. Predators spot the difference instantly. One says, "I'm unshaken." The other says, "Please don't hurt me." So how do you shift from target to threat? You become unreadable, unbreakable, unbothered. You learn to hold eye contact, not in aggression, but in neutral dominance. You move slowly, deliberately, without the anxiety of needing to prove anything. You speak when you choose, not when you're prompted. You detach from emotional performance. Because the more unpredictable you are, the more dangerous you become. A predator can't attack what they can't read. And in Machiavellian terms, that's power. Not in brute force, but in psychological posture. Because make no mistake, in a room full of people, the most dangerous person isn't the loudest, it's the one who doesn't flinch. Now, let's bring it full circle. You've seen how predators test, you've seen what signals they respond to, and you've seen how it all stems from what you tolerate and what you leak. But what happens when you turn the tables? What happens when you respond, not with rage, but with cold precision? Let's talk about the solution, the cure to chronic tolerance. The Machiavellian strategy of strategic intolerance. Because now, it's time to become a hard target. Now that you understand how predators select their prey, let's talk about how to make yourself unpalatable to them. Not by barking louder, not by puffing your chest, but through a cold, strategic intolerance that commands respect before a word is even spoken. This is where most people fail. They believe the antidote to disrespect is aggression. No, the real antidote is precision. Machiavelli didn't say, lash out at every offense. He taught this. It is much safer to be feared than loved, when one of the two must be lacking. Don't seek love. Don't beg for approval. Command respect. And if they can't give it, make them regret testing you. So how do you do that in the real world? 1. Respond to the first slight. Disrespect is like a crack in the dam. Tiny at first, but once tolerated, it floods your entire image. You don't wait for the fifth insult. You don't tolerate the joke and hope they stop. You correct it instantly. But here's the nuance Machiavelli would appreciate. It is necessary to be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten the wolves. Be both. Respond, but not emotionally. Not impulsively. Instead, respond surgically. 2. Don't overreact, but never let it slide. You don't need to bark. You don't need to clap back. You need to let them know that line is not just crossed, it's been burned behind them. Here's how. Bookmark tactical corrections. The calm stare. When someone disrespects you, don't smirk. Don't flinch. Just look at them. No reaction, no smile. The silence will choke them. The delayed response. Pause. Let the air hang. Then calmly say, try that again, or explain what you meant by that. Force them to justify their attempt. The surgical correction. One phrase. Cold, clear, final. Example, that doesn't fly with me. Or you mistook me for someone else. These don't escalate. They isolate. They clarify. They mark territory without making a scene, because loud retaliation invites challenge. But quiet power? It invites caution. Bookmark 3. Controlled perception. Quiet power, loud reaction. Remember, perception is everything. Machiavelli understood that a ruler didn't need to be cruel, only seen as someone capable of cruelty. Likewise, you don't need to be angry, only seen as someone who cannot be tested twice. Your presence should carry consequence. Every room you walk into, every table you sit at, people should know you don't beg, you don't chase, and you don't tolerate slights. That's not arrogance, that's social immunity. 4. Power moves that don't invite escalation. Set boundaries, publicly, calmly. If someone talks over you, don't shrink. Say clearly, let me finish. Exit without explanation. If someone crosses a line and you're in control of the environment, leave. No drama, just disappear. Absence is power. Hold the line consistently. The first time it's a mistake, the second time it's a message. Never wait for the third. Machiavelli would advise this. Men should be either treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries, but cannot for severe ones. In modern terms, don't deliver half consequences. Be absolute in your boundaries. Bookmark 5. Become a hard target in every social space. This is your new goal. To be the kind of person that makes people think twice before speaking carelessly. Not because you're angry, but because you are anchored. A hard target doesn't posture, doesn't brag, doesn't flex. A hard target is simply unmoved. They hold eye contact without tension. They speak with clarity, not apology. They don't explain their standards, they live them. Bookmark. Daily rewiring. Mental mantras, boundary affirmations, identity anchoring. This isn't just about behavior, it's about internal code. Here's how to start. Morning affirmation. Today, I will let no one confuse kindness for weakness. Nightly review. Reflect. Where did you tolerate too much? Where will you correct it tomorrow? Identity anchor. Write this down and burn it in. My respect is non-negotiable. One violation is all it takes. Because tolerance isn't compassion when it costs you power. It's self-betrayal dressed in politeness. And the more you betray yourself, the louder the world hears. Disrespect me, I won't fight back. But not anymore. Because now, you don't let it slide, you don't let it fester, you don't let it define you, you draw the line, you become the line. And next we're going deeper, into your identity itself. Let's rebuild it from the ground up. By now you understand, disrespect isn't random, it's not accidental, it's a test, a probe, a signal flare shot into your identity to see what you'll allow. And here's the brutal truth. Machiavelli would whisper, a man who permits offense once, invites betrayal twice. Because disrespect isn't just about what they do, it's about what you tolerate. Every time you let it pass, you participate in your own decline. You send your subconscious a message, I don't protect myself, I don't matter enough to defend. And your identity listens, it rewires, it erodes, until one day you're a shell of who you were, agreeable, available, but hollow. That ends now. Because if you want to be respected in this world, truly respected, it has to start internally. You don't need to be feared, but you must be respected. That's the line, not in ink, not in theory, but in identity. This line isn't drawn with anger, it's carved with certainty. You know who you are, you know what you'll never allow again. So let's make it real. Psychological boundary setting. Internal first. Decide now what is never allowed again. Write it, memorize it. External next. Every time someone crosses that threshold, you check it. Immediately, calmly, without apology. And here's the final rule. If they disrespect you once, it's on them. If they do it twice, it's on you. Because now you know better. And when you know better, you act sharper, speak fewer words, and move with finality. Your presence must carry consequence, not in violence, not in volume, but in energy, in posture, in decisions. You are no longer the person who tolerates just a joke. You are the storm that silence precedes, the unmoved wall they dare not lean against. This is your new identity, uncrossable, undeniable, unignorable. The first betrayal is theirs, the second is yours. Let that guide every room you enter. Now, shall we move to the final section? Here's the truth most people never confront. The world doesn't give power. It takes it from the unaware. And the first thing it steals, your dignity. Not all at once, but in pieces. In jokes that go unchallenged. In glances that go unanswered. In silences that scream, you won't fight for yourself. That's how the fall begins. Not with defeat, but with tolerance. Disrespect is the first domino in every downfall, and if you don't stop it at the source, it will rewrite your future. But that's not your story anymore. You've seen through the game. You've stepped behind the curtain. You now understand what Machiavelli always knew. Respect is never requested. It is projected. It is not a favor. It is a frequency. It's not given to the quiet. It's claimed by the decisive. So this is your moment. If you're done letting others define your value, if you're done carrying the weight of swallowed disrespect, then make the shift. Become unignorable. Speak less. Move sharper. Let every room feel the consequence of your presence. And if this message hit your soul, subscribe. Because the most dangerous thing you can do now is stay the same. We're not done. We're just getting started.